Hey folks, going to do a quick demonstration of the final product here. We've got two magical weapons that morph. We've got a sword and a dagger combo, and then this one is a mace that goes from a standard mace to a spiked mace, and it can also transform into a hammer, which is great. All right, so now we've got these two magical weapons. Which one would you pick? What if there is a chance that one of them was cursed? Well, anyways, I'll leave that for you to decide. I'm going to mainly stick to the technical process. We've got this great scene here that's actually free, and I'll show you where you can get it from the marketplace in a minute. But first, before we do that, I'm going to go over how to export these objects. So choose the objects you want to export. You select them. I hit Control B to select them in the browser. Then you right click, go to Asset Actions, and choose Export. And then it'll export as an FBX. So I exported the mace, the hammer, and a dagger, and the sword. And I brought them into Autodesk Maya. So here we are in Maya. We've got the assets. Now just really quick, the basis for a morph, it's a vertex transform, and a vertex transform means it just keeps track of the vertices between the objects. So you duplicate the object, and if it has the exact same number of vertices, you can then transform the second object, and once you've gotten it where you want it, so in this case, this is the same object, and I just moved the vertices around to be more like the dagger. And so this was the original dagger here. So it's close. And after moving those around, then you go to the animation menu, you go to deform, and you choose blend shape. And so once that's done, then you get different blend shape options. So, and those blend shapes come with the file. You can actually delete the second object after you've generated the blend shape. The information will stay on the object, and the vertex transforms will actually come in with your FBX. So let me quickly show one thing that you need to make sure when you export the selection. You need to go to the animation menu. So yeah, you just want to make sure that blend shapes is turned on when you're exporting your FBX. Hammer and mace was a bit more complex of an operation. So what do we do there? Well, I'll talk more in theory. I'm just going to show for this example how I did the sword, but I'll talk about the handoff, because obviously it would be a lot of work to get the hammer. Like this hammer has it has 355 vertices, whereas the mace has 704. So I did a multi-step process of getting the hammer and the mace to transform. And that makes for a much more enjoyable morph as well. So let me show now where to get the free assets. So here in the marketplace, if you just look for Free Fantasy Weapon Sample Pack, grab it. It's got the scene that's in with all the weapons and materials. It's really great. Okay, let's go back. All right, we're back in Unreal. So let's just quickly go over the sword. Hit Control B. I made a blueprint, an asset blueprint, and got that. I created there's a skeletal mesh. Now, that's one thing I needed to add to the Maya scene is before you export, you need to just create one bone. So I just went in, I created a skeleton, I created a joint, and then I bound it to that object, because in order for the information to work in Unreal, you need to have those all be skeletal meshes. So I added a component, skeletal mesh, and that skeletal mesh is in here. If you double click on this skeletal mesh, or let's take a look at the sword itself. When I brought it in, if you double click, you should see that the morph came in with it. And so There's the morph. What's kind of great about this morph is that you can overdrive this morph as well. And I did that a little bit with the mace hammer combo. Go to -1, or you can even go further than that. I just used the material and I instanced it from the original sword from the kit. So now I added just a collision box so that we could trigger it. I went into the construction script. I had dragged the sword down, and then I created a dynamic material instance. And I chose the material instance, and then I dragged off here, right-clicked, and created a variable called sword glow. So I promoted it to a variable here, called it sword glow so that I could use it in the event graph. Now, very quickly, on the begin play, I set the initial morph target. So here I dragged this down, holding down the control key. I set the initial morph target. Got to put the name in. You can also name those in Maya. I didn't, so I've got this like funky name of the object. You can copy those. That's kind of a nice function. Just right-click here, copy the name. Then when you're working on your blueprint, you can paste that in. So I've forgotten that in the past. I'm like, why are my morphs not working? And that's just because you forget to drop in the morph name. I wanted it to start out in the dagger form. So I figured out that the dagger form was at value 0, value 1 for the dagger. So now we've got that. Then I set up a MI standing near the sword. The idea is that I wanted to make this potentially modular, that I could use some of the same custom functions to trigger the sword or other magical objects. I created a test so that if I'm near this box and I hit the 1 key to test to see if it's a magic sword, then if it's yes, then I evaluate it here, and I then allow you to go forward. So I'm using a flip-flop here to transition between the playing and the reversing of the object between different states. This is a timeline, so there's a timeline there. Let's go in and take a look at what I did. This one was pretty simple. I created just a float, and I created a transition from 0 to 1 over 1 second, and then also I created a color track. Now for the color track, I went a little bit beyond 1 here so that you get a nice glow, and I piped it into the glow track on the material instance. So let me show that really quick. So here is the weapon, and all I did was I created a vector 3. So if you just hold down the V key, you're going to create a vector parameter, and then you can give that a name. So you just type the name in here. I typed in glow. I plug that into the emissive color, and by default it's not glowing. Now we have this sword glow variable that we declared in the construction script, and that allows us to reference the material instance. And now we're in the event graph, and now we drag out sword glow, and we can say set vector parameter value. And what is the name of the vector parameter value? It's glow. How are we going to transform the glow? Well, we're going to let the timeline do that. So that's where we plugged in the magic glow, and then also we're dynamically using this to transform the morph target as well. That's it. That's the simple basics for how I did the morphing sword. Really, really quick. So yeah, you have to get close before you can trigger it. I built some sound effects that I thought would go with these, like as this glows and grows, ascends, and also, sort of some hard noises to reflect the visuals, but that's more design. Okay, but the key thing that I wanted to point out before letting you go is how do you do the handoff? Well, part of the reason for having it glow was that I could do handoffs. I mean, aside from the fact that it's glowy and magical, but yeah. So I hit Control B, let's open this up, Control E to open up the editor here. So this is a little bit more complex. You can see I've got 2 sets of morphs. But basically what's great about this is that I was able to copy and paste most of these nodes here from the first one. So basically we go through, and we just have some error checking going on here. Basically it's the mace, and then when it's in, I just check to make sure that it's in the small form of the mace, it's not the spiked mace. And then if it is, and if a different button is pushed, then it can turn into the hammer. And when it's turning into the hammer at a certain point in the middle of the glow, it hides the mace and transforms into the hammer. So that's the basic handoff. That's how you do a lot of visual effects, right? You sort of cover something. I thought about covering it with particles, but in this case, I wanted to keep it more simple for this demo. I'm happy to answer questions. I wanted to make this, under 12 minutes. So if you want to know more about how to do this sort of more complex setup, then let me know. I want to know if anybody has other questions, or if you've built any magic weapons. I'd love to see what you're up to. That'll wrap things up. Let me know if you like this. Give it a like, and subscribe to the channel for more weekly content. Thanks so much.